now we are going to get into the Word. If you need a Bible, go ahead and raise your hand. We will get one to you. You're going to want to follow along here. There's a lot of meat in the psalm that we're going to go through today. And we're going to be in Psalm 62. Psalm 62. So while you're turning there, a little bit of an update. Like I said, it has been a while since I've got to be here. My name is Mayola. If I haven't met you yet, it's an honor for me to be here behind the pulpit to lead us today in the Word. And I've been learning a lot over the last couple weeks as I've been away from the pulpit. I haven't been away from One Love. But one of the things that I learned was from a man named Abner Chow. He's a preacher that I discovered recently. And he got up and he preached, and he started his whole sermon with this. His singular goal every time he's behind the pulpit is to exalt God. And I heard that and I went, that's it. That's it. So myself and any preacher who loves the Lord, their singular goal when coming here to preach the Word is to exalt God, to make Him known so that you would see Him. And so today, my goal is to exalt God. I hope today that I show you who He is. And the beauty of exalting God is I really don't have to do much. I kind of just got a point. Like, there He is. Look at Him. God is amazing. He is incredible. He is awesome. He is the Almighty. He is beautiful. And it is my privilege to just hold Him up for you so that you can see Him. So today, that is what I am going to attempt to do. And by God's grace, it will be done. But here's what I need for you guys. Just look at Him. Just see Him. Listen, I understand all of us coming in here. There's so many distractions, so many things trying to take our attention, so many concerns, so many worries, fights we've had this week, things we've been worried about, things that aren't going our way. All of this stuff is trying to take your attention and your vision. I'm asking you, just look at Him. Look at God, because when you see Him, everything else falls into place. Everything else is seen for what it ought to be. And so my job this morning is to hold Him up for you. Your job this morning is to enjoy Him. See Him. See His love for you, and let that affect your heart. Sound good? All right. I'm going to read Psalm 62 for us, and then we'll pray together. It says, for the choir director, according to Jeduthun, a psalm of David. And this is how it goes. My soul waits in silence for God only. From Him is my salvation. He only is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I shall not be greatly shaken. How long will you assail a man that you may murder him, all of you? Like a leaning wall, like a tottering fence. They have counseled only to thrust him down from his high position. They delight in falsehood. They bless with their mouth, but inwardly they curse. Selah. My soul, wait in silence for God only, for my hope is from Him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I shall not be shaken. On my God, my salvation and my glory rest. The rock of my strength, my refuge is in God. Trust in Him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before Him. God is a refuge for us. Selah. Men of low degree are only a vanity, and men of rank are a lie. In the balances, they go up, and they are together lighter than breath. Do not trust in oppression. Do not vainly hope in robbery. If riches increase, do not set your heart upon them. Once God has spoken. Twice I have heard this, that power belongs to God, and loving kindness is yours, O Lord. For you recompense a man according to his work. Father, thank you. Thank you for all that you are. And today, our ask, Lord, is simple. Let us see you. Glorify yourself, God. Exalt yourself in our eyes. We would know you deeper and more truly every day. There is so much distraction, Lord. There's so much fighting for our attention. Would we be still in our hearts and in our minds and just listen for you? And God, we ask that you would speak mightily to us. If we have come into this place, into your presence, expecting just another service, forgive us. You are the God who does above all that we can ask, all that we can think, all that we can imagine. And we come to you now, Lord, and ask that you would do that. Help us to see you clearly, beautifully, mightily. Let today be a glorious day in your name. Would you bless me, Lord, that as I speak, would I bring you honor and glory and praise? Make much of yourself through me. Bless me, Lord, more and more so that I might glorify your name. For the lost, we ask that today be the day of their salvation. Would they see the glory of God and be brought into the family? That they would see and know true forgiveness, love, and grace. Do all of these things and more, Lord, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right, family, so Psalm 62. This is a Psalm of David. It's important to know who's writing. It gives you a little bit of context about what's going on in the Psalm. Now, we know a lot about David at this point. We are 61 Psalms, 62 Psalms deep. We've heard a lot about him. Keep in mind who this is as we go through it. It'll give you some insight as to what we're talking about. And then this is something I just wanted to tag on. If you read Matthew chapter 7, it's Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 7 parallels this psalm in a lot of ways. So if you're looking to add to your quiet time or just something to think about throughout the week, go ahead and check out Matthew chapter 7 when you have time in regards to this. For right now, let's dive into this psalm. It starts like this. My soul waits in silence for God only. From him is my salvation. Now, if there is one verse I want you to take away today, or if there's one concept that you grab hold of and walk away with, it is going to be found in verse 1. Verse 1 is the heartbeat, it is the thrust, it is the purpose of this whole psalm. And it is David saying, my soul waits in silence for only God. My soul waits in silence for only God. There's a stillness here. There's a trust. There's a peace in David. And you can see it as he's saying these words, my soul, it waits. Waiting and silence are two things we're not really good at. Listen, the world that we live in has not taught us to wait. It has taught us immediacy is important. It has taught us instant is important, right? Silence is a foreign thing to the world that we live in. Silence is almost uncomfortable in the world that we live in, right? Like if I just stop talking for like 10 seconds, we're 4 seconds in. Some of you are uncomfortable already. Right? Silence is weird to us. It's so funny. So I get to do men's ministry on Tuesday nights, and there's times we break up into small groups. And if ever they break into small groups and the music isn't playing, I can hear guys or like see guys just looking around like, someone going to play that background music? Like, what's going on? Silence is weird to us. It's almost unnatural, and that's a shame because silence is beautiful. Because often God speaks in the silence. Often God ministers most mightily in the silence, and yet we're almost afraid of it. Here, David is saying, I will wait. There's a confidence, there's a peace in his statement. This is what his soul does. He's giving us a commentary on what's happening in his life. He's saying, my soul does this. It waits. And it waits patiently, in peace and in confidence. And it is waiting for only one, and that is God. God is the only object of his affection and his desire that he is waiting for. Now, this is something that we do. We'll often say, my soul waits, but not always for God or God only. Right? Often subtly, maybe unintentionally, we'll do this thing where we say, my soul waits on getting my way. My soul waits on having my dreams accomplished. My soul waits on this other person to get their life together. My soul waits on all these things to work themselves out. Then will I have peace. David is trying to point us to the heartbeat of what he's trying to get at here, and that is my soul waits for God only. That is something that David and myself, we're going to keep thrusting throughout this message is God alone. God only. God is enough. He is sufficient. And the more we believe in that, the more we can, like David, say, I will wait for God in silence. Often we make our hope things that are not God, but things that come from God. Maybe his ways, maybe his blessings, maybe his gifts. We make those things our hope rather than God himself. And the chasm between God and his gifts, they're massive. We need to understand God alone and the beauty of God alone. Now, David again says he waits in silence, meaning he's not complaining. He's not crying out. He's not screaming. He's just waiting in silence. But here's something that Duke picked up, and I thought it was so beautiful. He said, David is silent, but so is God. If David is sitting in silence, that means God's not speaking either. Now, often in counseling, this is something that comes up over and over and over again. Especially as a pastor, we do a lot of counseling, and the big fear, a big concern of people is often, I don't hear God, or I feel like he's distant. Now, as pastors, we have also felt that. And I'm sure a lot of us in this room have felt that, right? Who here hasn't felt like God's not speaking? We've all understood that feeling. God is quiet, or I don't hear him. And it becomes this thing of fear and concern, right? When people are telling us this, there's a worry about them. And we understand, because to know the presence of God and then to feel as though it has left, that's a scary thing. It is a thing that brings tears and fear and anxiety to feel like God is not there. It's scary because we understand what David is saying here. He's our protection. But David says, in silence, I will wait. Not I will panic. Not I will be afraid. Not I will run around like a chicken with his head cut off until things happen, right? Like I will wait. And I will wait in the silence. And we can learn a lot here from David in his waiting. Because look at how he talks about God while he's waiting. Look at verse 2. Verse 2 says, He only is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I shall not be greatly shaken. Do you see how David talks about God? Even when he's quiet. David knows something. He knows who God is, and this is what he leans on. This is what he is waiting on, is this God who is his strength, who is his salvation, who is his stronghold. I will wait for him. Do you see the way David treasures God? He sees him for who he is. And so even in the silence, David knows these things. Now there's a nearness that you can see in David and God, even if he's not talking. There's a relationship there that he understands. David knows he's close. He is there. There is a love for all that God is to him. And he knows who God is, right? He says these things. God is his rock. He is his salvation. He is his stronghold. Not only does his salvation come from God, his salvation is God. And so he's in his mind painting this picture, reminding himself of who God is because he is waiting. David sees God in all these awesome and mighty ways, and he's trusting in this. David has a confidence in God, and that's why he says, I will not be greatly shaken. If he understands who God is, nothing can shake him. Nothing can take him away off of the solid foundation that he stands on if he knows God. He has a confidence in God that no matter what is happening, he is good. This is a confidence, family, that if we can adopt, a lot of our stress and drama will go away. If we can just have this confidence that no matter what happens, I will not be shaken because my feet are on the rock. So many things in life will wash over us without wrecking us. This is the same confidence that Paul had in Jesus. And I want you guys to see this. So 2 Corinthians 1, this will be overhead for you. Paul says, and he writes, We do not want you to be unaware, brothers, of the affliction we experienced in Asia. For we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despaired for life itself. Indeed, we felt that we had received the sentence of death. But that was to make us rely not on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. He delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us. On him we have set our hope that he will deliver us again. So this is the Apostle Paul, pretty favored by God, saying, yeah, I thought we were dead. I thought we had received the sentence of death, but you know what that was for? That was to make us trust in him, in the one who raises the dead, that even if we died, if he still had purpose for us, he would bring us back. He has delivered us, and he will deliver us again. Paul is bulletproof. This man says, even if my life be taken from me, I have one hope, and it is God. Family, if we can pick this up, if we can hold this, if we can run with this, God alone is enough. If all things are taken from me, but I have God, that is enough. Sadly, the world is trying to teach us otherwise. The world is trying to teach us that You can have all that you want, all the peace, all the acceptance, all the love, all the riches, all the glory, all the fame, all the attention. You can have all of that. And if you don't have God, that's okay because you have all of this. Family, you can have every treasure this world has to offer, every deep and good pleasure you've ever experienced, thrust upon you at your beck and call whenever you would like. But if you did not have God, you would have nothing. All of it would amount to trash if you did not have God. God alone is our refuge. And so often we fall into this thing where we place our hope in other things. God alone, trusting and treasuring God. This is what David is doing. And trusting and treasuring God does not come absent of affliction. You can trust and treasure God, and affliction will still come. But if you trust and treasure God, no affliction you go through is without God. He is with you in all of it. Now, David here is going to share with us a little bit of his affliction. Find me in verse 3. David's asking questions, and he says, "How long will you assail a man, that you may murder him, all of you? Like a leaning wall, like a tottering fence, they have counseled only to thrust him down from his high position. They delight in falsehood. They bless with their mouth, but inwardly they curse. Selah." Now, it's likely that David is speaking here of some instance in his life, some specific situation where people are talking against him. Now, the psalm doesn't lend us to any one specific situation, and I think that's intentional because you could point to almost any point in David's life and these words be true. Right? The word assail is there are people verbally assaulting him. There are people speaking evil against him. There are people trying to tear down his character with their words. There are people attacking who he is and his own life. And he's asking the question, how long are you guys going to do this? How long are you going to attack? How long are you going to act like you have this power? Because you're like this wall that's leaning, this fence that's tottering. He's saying there's a weakness and an imminent destruction to these attackers, right? They give this appearance of strength, right? The wall and the fence, they give this appearance of security and safety, but their doom is imminent. It's coming. It's going to fall. The wall is leaning. The fence is tottering. So all this stuff, all of his attackers, he's saying, why will you keep doing this? You have no strength. You have no power if you don't have God. And he's making a comparison here between his enemies and God. His enemies give the appearance of strength, but inwardly are weak. God gives the appearance of strength because he's strong. And so here he's trying to make this comparison. Look, all of this stuff, it means nothing. God is strong through and through. And then in verse 4, he gives a really accurate picture of his enemies and ours. They delight in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. That is a perfect picture of the enemy and of sin and of temptation. Outwardly, it is a blessing. Inwardly, it is a curse. Family, all temptation outwardly is a blessing. Otherwise, we would never fall for it. If all temptation outwardly was a curse and inwardly was a curse, we would never be tempted by anything. But the temptation comes because we think there is a blessing coming. Satan, the enemy, these temptations, they lie to us and tell us, if you give into this, there's some kind of blessing for you, and beneath it is a curse ready to bite you and poison you. This is how it works. A good example of this is like when a child gets a smartphone. That child thinks they're receiving a blessing, but there is so much danger in that little brick. You know how much damage has been done to the mental health of children in this nation because they thought they were receiving a blessing? Now, please, I'm not the old man who's saying technology's bad, get rid of it. Like, that's not what I'm here for. But what I'm saying is, if you give a child a smartphone with no instruction, with no blocks, with no safety, you are handing them a gun. And the damage that can be done to them and others with that phone is incredible. I cannot tell you how many of my young ladies and youth and young adults have been hurt deeply by the things they've seen and heard and done on that phone. I cannot tell you how many young men have been poisoned, broken by the things that are happening on that phone. And we see it as a blessing, but there's a curse underneath. This is how the enemy presents himself always, always an angel of light. He's not going to come to you as he is because you'll never receive him. Be aware, family, of the blessings and the curses that come with temptation. And the temptation here is to trust in anything but God. To trust in anyone but God. Now he makes this point, and then he says, Selah. Think about this. Think about who God is, and think about what the world is offering you. Think about the strength of God and the weakness of all other things. Just ponder the ending of following these two roads and ask yourself, which is greater? The answer is real easy. It's God. God is greater, and God alone is greater. Trust in him only. Now, verses 5 through 8, this is David's kind of big point. The whole structure is pointing to these verses. Verse 5 says this, my soul, wait in silence for God only, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I shall not be shaken. On God, my salvation and my glory rest. The rock of my strength, my refuge is in God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Now, in going through these Psalms, you see a lot of repetition, right? A lot of them are written by David. He has this kind of same heartbeat. This isn't the first time we've heard David talk about God being his stronghold and his refuge and his salvation, right? You go read Psalm 18, it starts the same way. And even in this psalm, there is repetition. Now, why? What is the purpose? It's because David needs these truths just like we do. He repeats them to himself because he needs to hear them again just like we do. Right? If you ever get into the headspace of like, I get it, he's a stronghold, move on. I suggest to you this, you don't get it. Because if you can say that flippantly, yeah, okay, he's a stronghold, move on, I don't think you understand what that means. Because if you truly understood what it meant for God to be your stronghold, that would bring you joy because we need that stronghold every single day. Listen, with the spiritual warfare that's happening around us actively, even right now, we are in constant need of a refuge. We are in constant need of a stronghold. If we trust in anything but God, and we often do, we will continually need these reminders. And so even in this one psalm, David is repeating himself. Why? Because he needs it and we needs it. If we're honest, we know, God, I need you daily. There's a post going around social media and it says, people ask, do you really need Jesus to go to heaven? And the response is, you need Jesus to go to Walmart. You need Jesus all the time. Why? Because he's our stronghold. He's our refuge. And if we run to anything else, we will fail. Now, if we just think repetition is there for the sake of repetition, we actually miss a lot of the depth that's being said here. I want you to look at verse 5, because verse 5 says, my soul, wait in silence for God only. Look at verse 1. My soul waits in silence for God only. Now, if you read those two verses and just glance over them, you actually miss a really powerful thing. There's a difference between the two. The first one, David is telling us what his soul does. In verse 5, David is telling his soul what to do. In the first one, he says, my soul waits. The second time he says it, he says, my soul, wait. Wait in silence. David is speaking to his soul. He's speaking to his heart, his affections, his emotions. And he does this often, right? Psalm 43, this will be overhead. Psalm 43, why are you in despair, O my soul? Why are you disturbed within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, the help of my countenance and my God. David is having a conversation with his soul. He's asking, what is your problem? Why are you worried? Hope in him, trust in him, right? Psalm 103, he does the same thing. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget none of his benefits. You see what David is doing? In the beginning, he says, my soul waits. And then he talks about all these enemies and all these things and all these dangers. And so he has to almost stop and go, my soul, wait. Wait in silence for God only. Now, why does he have to preach to his soul, his affections, his emotions? Why? Because we all know that our emotions and what we know are often at odds with one another. We have often been in this place where we know everything is all good and we have no reason to be anxious or distressed or sad, but man, do we feel that way. Man, do we feel sad and frustrated and angry, or we don't feel anything at all, and that frustrates us, right? And this is why David is preaching to his soul. There was a mental health conference that we went to, and the guy had a focus on David, and he was saying, man, David had some mental health issues. He had depression, he had anxiety, he was a sex addict, he had all of these things. And that's why you see David, I think, constantly speaking to his soul, because he knows God. He knows God is the only hope. There is no doubt in him, but his soul, his feelings, his emotions, they run from him. And so he preaches to his soul, be still. Praise God. Why are you worried? Trust in him. Family, this is an important thing that we must do. Preach to your soul. Speak the truth of God to your emotions. Tell your soul, what are you doing? Praise him. Trust him. Love him. Preach the gospel daily to your soul. Now you might be thinking, well, what do I do if my soul no like listen? Preach again. And again and again and again. Speak the truth of God. Let that rest in you. Let it stir in you. Let that be the thing that you sit in until your soul comes in line with what is true. And even if it doesn't, you can still rest on what you know. And that is God alone is enough. Even if my emotions never come into a line, God, you are enough. Even if I don't stop feeling sad, God, you are enough. Even if I don't stop feeling stressed, God, you are enough. Preach to your soul like David and tell it, wait for God alone. So that your soul will not find its hope or rest in anything else. Because that will cause you more trial, more drama, more strife. My soul, wait in silence for God alone. Now notice, it's still quiet here. It is still silent. God still has not spoken. David still says, wait. Because he only has one hope. And he explains that to us in verse 6. God only is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I shall not be shaken. Now, why the reminder of alone, right? You hear him say again and again, God only, God only, God only. Why that reminder? Because the temptation to trust God and is heavy in our lives. The temptation to trust God, yes, but also it is heavy in our lives. And so David, with this reminder, says, God alone. Now, there is a way that we can overcorrect here, and I want to keep us from falling off the horse the other way, right? When I say God only, I want to tell you a story to kind of help you understand what I mean. There's a sister in Christ that I have. She's a young adult. She wears this shirt, and it says, Jesus and therapy, right? And the shirt was created to kind of do away with the stigma that Christians shouldn't be in therapy, right? This weird idea that if you're a believer, all things should be happy-go-lucky all the time, and you should never have any drama. That's not real. And so that company or that person put that shirt together to make it okay for Christians to feel like they could need help. You know what I mean? So she's wearing this shirt, and somebody comes up to her and says, you know, you don't need therapy. You just need Jesus. She comes and tells me this happened, and my response was, where he stay? Where he went? She's like, no, you don't need to talk to him. No, because I go tell him, bro, when your car breaks down, you don't need one mechanic. You just need Jesus. No, just pray, and if the car no fix, that's on you, yeah? Because what she's saying by wearing this shirt is not her hope is in Christ and in therapy. What she's saying is therapy helps me see Christ. It helps me see how God was working in my pain. It helps me see that Jesus has never left me. It helps me push against the lies and see the truth of Scripture. Do you see what I'm saying? Her hope is only in Jesus, but there are means by which God allows us to see him. And therapy is one of those things. And so I say to anybody, if you're on the fence about if you need therapy or not, you're not crazy if you need therapy. It just means you've been through some things, that you need help wrestling with some things, that you need help trying to understand some things. There's nothing wrong with a believer going to therapy. But if that is your hope, then we have missed it. Our hope should be in God and God alone. Right? The word is the same thing. Family, this book, this thing breathed out by God points to him. And the only reason that it is good is because it points us to God alone. We do not worship the word. If we take the word seriously, we cannot worship the word. Because all the word does is say, look at him. Look at God. Behold his glory. Behold his holiness. Behold his peace. Look to your king. This is awesome because it points us to the beauty of God in such a unique way. I said this to the young adults on Friday. I was listening to a pastor once, and he said something, and I rolled my eyes the first time I heard it, but then he made sense. And he said, reading the word, like reading about Jesus, is better than being there when all this stuff is happening, right? And I rolled my eyes and I went, yeah, right, dude, I'd much rather be there. But he's saying, look, if you're there when Jesus is preaching the Beatitudes, right? There's 5,000, 10,000 people or whatever. You're sitting in the middle of that crowd. All you're hearing is, blessed are the... Because there's kids crying and people running around and people elbowing each other and there's brothers arguing in the back. But you get to sit where the disciples were and hear what they said. You get to be in the upper room where only 11 men were and hear the heart of Jesus as he prays to his Father. And the word is beautiful because it lets us in, and what it lets us do is see Christ. It lets us see God, who alone is our hope. And so family, what I'm trying to get us to understand here is put your hope in God alone and allow all the things that he's given us to point back to him, because that's their purpose. My purpose as a pastor and as a preacher is just to point you to him. Kahu David always says, don't elevate the Kahu. Don't elevate the pastor because he's just a road sign going, he's over there. Look at him. He's awesome, right? Trust in God alone. There are so many things we are tempted to trust in outside of God. Primary among the things we want to trust outside of God is us. Oh, do we want to trust ourselves more than God? God, I know you've said this is wrong, but I think you're wrong. I know you've said this isn't okay, but society tells me it's cool. I know you think this is best for me, but I think this is best for me. Family, if we trust in ourselves more than we trust in God, I say this with love, that's dumb. Because often when we're running to God for help, we're the ones who put ourselves in this situation in the first place. And then we trust in ourselves when God says, okay, here's your way out. And we go, ooh, I don't like that. I want to do it my way. Family, the creator of all things, perfectly intelligent and all-knowing, knowing the depths of your needs, is telling you, here's what you need. It's me. And we're going, yeah, you. And if ever you think you are improving upon the methods of God, back yourself up. God's ways cannot be improved upon because he is perfect. And if he says to you he loves you and he's guiding you away from something, trust in him. God alone knows. Do not trust in yourself more than God. It is a foolish thing to do. God alone knows what we need. Find me now in verse 7. It is on God, this same God, that our salvation rests. David says, my glory rests on God. The rock of my strength and my refuge is in God. God is our refuge and our protection from so many things. The greatest among these things is God protects us from his own wrath. God protects us from the consequence for our own sin. And we'll play all of that out later. Right now, what I want us to see is what David is talking about when he says, my glory rests on God. That word glory is weightiness. He's talking about all that I am, everything that is good, everything that lives in me, I place that on God. Because it cannot be placed on anyone or anything else. It has to rest on God. Verse 8, he starts giving instruction to the people. Remember, this is a corporate worship song. And so to the people, he says, trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Trust, let your confidence be in God at all times. At all times, no matter what is happening, trust in God. I was at a dinner recently and the story was told of this woman who was sitting there. She was in a country where they were hostile to the gospel and they found out that she was leading a Bible study. So they send this assassin to kill her. He comes into the room and pulls out the gun and she doesn't say, let me live. She doesn't say, don't kill me. She says, can I share the gospel with you? She shares the gospel with this man. He gets saved. He then leaves and gets into a car accident. The mafia or mob that he works for thinks that he got into the accident on the way to kill her, so they don't come after him. This man is now a church leader in that country because that woman trusted in God. All she knew to do in that moment was what God had told her to do, and that was make disciples. And even then, with a gun in her face, she said, can I tell you about Jesus? Trust God at all times. Even with your life on the line, at that point, you have no other hope. Run to Him. Trust in Him. When things look great and when they don't, trust God. When relationships are bad and when they are good, trust God. When things make sense and when they don't, trust God. When the economy is booming and when it's crumbling, trust God. When you're in pain and when you're not, at all times, trust in God, because He is a refuge. And then David gives this invitation to the people. It's a command, really, and he says, pour out your heart before Him. Pour out your heart before God because He is a refuge. What he's telling you is, be open with Him because He's safe. He's a safe place to do that, to be open, to be honest, to let your heart out. Family, isn't this what we all want? We want somebody that we can just be ourselves with, that we can just be open, that they will see us for who we are in all our pain and all our trauma and all our hurt and all our distress, and they will see us and they will love us. This is what we're looking for. You know who's already got it? God. And that's why David says, pour your heart out before Him. Tell Him everything. Tell Him how you feel. Tell Him what you know. Tell Him what you're afraid of. Pour your heart out because He's safe. Be vulnerable with Him because He's safe. Now, men, this is especially powerful for us, and here's why. We need to be strong. Being strong for us as men is not an option. It is what God has made us to be. But it's exhausting sometimes. It's hard always being strong. It's hard always having it together. It's hard not breaking and not crumbling. It's hard to just lead sometimes. But this is the beauty of God, is we can run to Him, men, and be weak. Because it is in our weakness that He is strong. You can run to God and say, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to love this person. I don't know how to carry this weight. I can't, God. You can be weak with Him, and He will strengthen you, men. He will give you what you need. If you trust in Him alone, He will give you what you need to continue forward. But you can be weak with God. In your weakness, He is strong. Ladies, pour your heart out to Him. Your emotions, it's a very intimate thing to trust anybody with. You can trust Him with your emotions. With your deepest pains and hurts and desires, you can lay that out before God because He is safe. He is a refuge for you in those things. And so, men, women, pour your heart out to God. And God alone, because He can heal. He can bear the weight of those things. He can love you through those things, and man, does He want to. Trust in Him. Pour your heart out to God because He alone can love you perfectly through all of it. And He alone can bear the weight of all that you have. Pour your heart out to God, and then David says, Selah. Just think on the beauty of being open with God, on the blessing that it is to be honest with Him. David continues the psalm now in verse 9, and he's trying to help us see a very important point. Verse 9 says, men of low degree are only vanity, and men of rank are a lie. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than breath. Do not trust in oppression, and do not vainly hope in robbery. If riches increase, do not set your hope upon them. What he's trying to get us to see is the weakness and worthlessness of trusting in anything but God. He's saying men of low rank, they're nothing, right? You can have an army of men. It means nothing if you don't have God. Men of high rank. You can have men who are in the elite circles of all the world. It means nothing if you don't have God. You can put them both in the balance and they will be lighter than breath. They have no value to you. He's trying to get the reader to see trusting in anyone or anything but God will fail you. He's exalting God as the only hope because everything and everyone at some point will fail you. If there is one thing that I have mastered in my marriage, it is failing. I have failed my wife often and in brand new ways sometimes. I'm very creative with my failure, yeah? I'm not boring. We were having dinner on Thursday, so me and Duke got invited to Auntie Cindy's house, and so we're over there hanging out, and we're eating, and Allie is stuck in traffic, so I don't know if there was that accident on Thursday. She was stuck. They closed the road. She was stuck with my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old and another friend in the car for 4 hours. Yeah, always right. And so during the dinner, they were all supposed to meet us for dinner, but they're in like Waipahu. They're stuck there, and so every 5 minutes, I'm checking her location, and she has not moved in an hour. And so Duke goes, hey, let's pray for them. And so he gets his sons and he gathers them together and he says, okay, Auntie Allie's stuck in traffic, and imagine if you were there and how you would pray for her. Let's pray for her. And while he's praying, I'm going, Lord, this man thought to think of praying for my wife before I did. Like, what is going on? And so he's praying for my wife, and I'm going, Lord, forgive me for not loving her. And I had to tell my wife, babe, I failed you. Duke thought to pray for you before I did. Now that's a small example, but man, do I fail her often. And I don't want her hope ever to be in me. I always want it to be in God, because I say this, family, and please hear me when I say this, every single person or thing outside of God will at some point fail you. As your pastor, there are very few things that I can promise you. One of the things I can promise you is I will fail you. I will. I cannot bear your hope and your joy on myself. That is a weight too heavy for me. And if I tried to bear it, I would break and I would hurt you. And so I say this to you, do not put your hope in me. Put your hope in the same person I put my hope in. And let me point you to him. Only God can carry that weight. If your hope or your joy or your peace rest in anyone but God, it will fall. And when it crumbles, man, will it hurt. But if your hope is in God, he is steadfast and he is immovable. He is a rock, he is a stronghold, and he is a refuge, and he will never fail you. And so you trust in people to the end that they point you to Christ, and that is it. Allow them the grace to be human. We will all fail. We are not to be trusted with your hope. We are not to be trusted with your joy. We are not to be trusted with your peace. Only God can bear the weight of all of that. Put your glory on him. All your weight, all that you are, put it on God alone. Now, verse 10 should go without saying, but I feel like I need to at least talk about this just in case. Verse 10, do not trust in oppression, and do not vainly hope in robbery. If your riches increase, do not set your heart upon them. What David is saying here is, if you trust and you think you're getting away with sin, don't. If you think you are gaining in life because you are sinning against other people, knock it off right now. Because if you trust in these things, they will fall. Do not trust in sin to lead you home. Do not trust in sin to lead you to peace. That is dangerous. Now, verse 11 here, there's a shift, and we see something beautiful. And verse 11 says, once God has spoken. Twice I have heard this, that power belongs to God, and loving kindness is yours, O Lord. For you recompense a man according to his work. And so finally here, God speaks. And it says God speaks once, and David hears it twice. And the idea here is that when God speaks, he only needs to speak once. But we ought to listen and meditate and hear those things again and again. So even here, he's blessing us with this repetition. If God speaks once, hear it twice. Listen to it again, because we need to understand these things. Now, God responds after all the silence. Right? David's been waiting against all these enemies, all this wickedness, all this stuff. And what does God want him to know? Power belongs to God, and loving kindness belongs to God. What? I have enemies talking bad about me. I have all this evil stuff going on in my life. I've been waiting for you, and your response is, I have power and love? Yeah. Basically, what God is showing to David here is, I am enough. I am enough. I have power, and I have loving kindness. I am your stronghold. I am your refuge. I am enough. You don't need all these things to work themselves out. I have you, and you have me. That is enough. God is enough. He's basically saying God is sufficient. He has everything that I need. Now, here's the beauty of these two things, him saying power and loving kindness. Right? We know that God is power. We know that by his word, he spoke things into existence. We cannot even fathom the power it takes for that to happen. Like, we cannot even in our wildest imagination understand the reality of the power that God has. He is so mighty. And then he says he has loving kindness, right? That's the Hebrew word chesed, and it means faithful love or covenant-keeping love or loyal love, meaning God loves us because he said he would, and it's part of his character. And so he has power and he has love, and both of these things come together to bring us to this refuge. So God is a stronghold, but he's not like a concrete bunker that you hide in the dark and hope nothing bad happens to you. He's not some cold, heartless thing that is just forming and functioning and serving what it needs to do. He protects us and is our refuge like a father is to a child. When a child is scared and they're hurt and they run to dad and dad protects, he's not just going, well, it's my job, so I'll keep you safe, I guess. A real father loves his children and protects and cares for and keeps them. And here is the beauty. I was talking to a bunch of young adults this last week, and they were talking about how they don't have dads. Their dads weren't in their life, so much so that they created a club in high school called the No Fathers Club. They thought it was funny. But the beauty of what they were saying was this. It helped us to see how awesome God is as a father. We now have the most awesome Father that will love us, that will protect us, that won't leave us. And we've seen him through all of our lives. And it is a beautiful thing that you can say, my God is a refuge in intention and in love. My Father who is in heaven loves me. And so we should run to him. He is wanting us to run to him for refuge, to trust in him alone. This isn't something God does begrudgingly. It's not like we run to him for help and he goes, you again. This same thing? You're coming to me again for this? God doesn't do that. He is our refuge. He is our strength. He is our Father. And let me tell you, please look at me when I say this to you. Your Father, who is the creator of all things, loves you. Loves you. Loves you so much so that he would sacrifice for you. It is God's joy to be our refuge. He is pleased when we run to him. And so often we are not convinced of that. So often we think we're bothering God when we run to him for help. Family, I'm going to make a case right here so that we understand forever that it is God's joy to protect us. God protects us from his own wrath. Now, if there is anything that would shy God away from protecting us, it would be protecting us from his own wrath, but it is his joy to do this. And I want to show you this. This is Isaiah 53. It is here talking about the Father and the Son. And it says of the Father, the Lord was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. If he would render himself as a guilt offering, he will see his offspring, and he will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of the Lord will prosper in his hand. As a result of the anguish of his soul, he will see it and be satisfied. By his knowledge, the righteous one, my servant, will justify the many, as he will bear their iniquities. What this just told us was that the Father was pleased to crush his Son. Pleased to crush him. Why? We can't even understand what that means as humans. Like, we cannot even fathom what it would be like to be pleased to crush our child. The Father is pleased to smash and to press and to destroy his Son, his boy, his only Son. He is pleased to crush him. Why? Because then he can be our refuge. He can protect us from his own wrath, the wrath that is due to us because of our sin. He crushes Christ so that Christ could save us. He is pleased to do this. And if he would joyfully surrender his Son, what would he ever not want to protect us from? Why would we ever think he protects us begrudgingly, family, if he will sacrifice his boy? Why would we ever hesitate to run to him? It is his joy to protect us. Run to him and run to him alone. He loves to shelter his children. Now the beauty here is that we see God speak. And he speaks and he says, I have power and I have loving kindness. It's an invitation to come. But what about when he doesn't speak? Because we've also been there. Where we are waiting and we are waiting and we are waiting and we are waiting and God says nothing. And we feel abandoned, and we feel alone, and we feel hurt. What then? What about when God doesn't speak? I was talking to a brother, and he said to me, hey, Marley, you know when you guys preach and you talk about God showed us this? It makes us think that you hear God audibly, and it makes us feel real junk. And so let me just clear the air here. I do not hear God audibly. I can't tell you what his accent sounds like. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't hear God audibly. When I say God speaks, he speaks in many ways. Most prominently and most clearly in his word. When I say God showed me, I mean here. Through people, through counsel, through wisdom, through all these things. God speaks in many ways, but I have not heard him audibly. I have yet to receive that blessing. And so if you feel discouraged because you don't hear God audibly, you are in good company. I am right there with you. We'll start a club. It'll be called Children of God. What I'm saying is, don't be discouraged if you don't hear God, because David here waits in silence. David, man after God's own heart, waits in silence. And if you want to hear God speak, there's a very clear way to do it. And I want to show us this. Hebrews 1. God, after he spoke long ago to the fathers and the prophets in many portions and in many ways, in these last days has spoken to us in his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the world. And he, Jesus, is the radiance of his glory and the exact representation of his nature, and upholds all things by the power of his word. When he had made purification of sin, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. If you feel God is silent and you want to hear him speak, look to Christ. If you want to hear God speak, look at Jesus. Because in Christ, he speaks more clearly and more loudly and more powerfully than in any number of words any person could speak. Look at Christ, because in it is the voice, the word of God, speaking to creation, his love, his protection, his affection, his power, his holiness, his humility, his might. If you want to hear God speak, look at Jesus. Look at your King. Look at your Savior. Look at the Son, because there God speaks. If God never said one word to me audibly, but every day he let me see more of Jesus, that would be enough. And I would rejoice in seeing more of Christ every day, even if he never told me one word with his voice. If the first time I hear God speak audibly is when I stand before him face to face, I am cool with that. Because now he speaks through his Son. Now he speaks in his word. Now he speaks through his people. Now he speaks by his Spirit. And if these are the ways he will speak, I will listen. Family, I pray that all of us will listen. Do not be discouraged if you don't hear God, because even in the silence, he speaks. Look to Christ. He is enough. In Jesus is found all the treasure of wisdom and knowledge, every spiritual gift in the heavenly places found in Christ. He is enough. God alone is enough. God alone is sufficient. And so, believer, brother and sister in Christ, pour out your heart to God. Talk to him. Even in the silence, wait for him. Trust in him. Rejoice in him. Bless him. In this time that we have, don't let it just be a set of music where you got to go to the bathroom and get up and do what you got to do. Let it be a time of being with him. Pouring your heart out to him. If it's joy, pour out the fullness of joy. If it's sorrow, pour out the fullness of sorrow. If it's, I don't know, let that go too. Whatever it is, pour your heart out to God, because he's your safe place. Run to him. If you need help, that's what our prayer team is for. Come to them. Let them hear your heart and they will pray over you. If you have no words to say, that's all right. Hopefully they do. And even if they don't, you guys can sit and wait together for God. Family, don't waste this time. God gives it to us to rejoice and to cry and to heal and to hurt and to be blessed. All of it. Let it be done in his name and for his glory, so that your joy would be full. Pour out your heart to God. Trust in him alone. Amen? Amen. If there's anybody here who does not know God as a refuge, let today be the day that you run to him. We all have sinned. We are all guilty, and if we don't run to Jesus, we have no hope. He is the only one who can take on the wrath of God for us. If you've never asked Jesus to forgive you of your sins, let today be the day that you do that. Come to our prayer team members. Ask them, what does it mean to follow Jesus? Who is this man? What can he do for me? Let them share the gospel with you, that Christ took on the sin of the world on your behalf, and if you put your faith in him alone, you will be saved. Run to Jesus. Believer, run to Jesus. Find peace in him. Let's pour our heart out before God.
Aloha, I'm Duke and I'm the campus pastor at the Windward campus. I want to say thank you for tuning in today. We hope that you were inspired and strengthened with today's celebration. If you're new to One Love, we encourage you to visit us online at onelove.org and fill out a connect card so we can keep you up to date with all the things happening here. And while you're there, you can also learn more about One Love, submit prayer requests, or see more of our studies through the Bible. There are many ways to stay connected, so we encourage you to take that first step. If you are watching today's celebration via YouTube, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to keep informed with new messages. Most importantly, if you made a decision to follow Christ today, we encourage you to click on our I Said Yes to Christ link at the bottom of our website and fill out the form so we can stay connected. And one last thing, if you want to learn more about the good news of Jesus Christ, we encourage you to visit goodnewshawaii.com. There you will find 5 short videos about living a life in Christ and a free discipleship booklet designed to encourage your new faith. Mahalo for tuning into One Love today. We hope that you were blessed by our time together. Aloha.